So why don't we kick off? I think everyone's here, everyone's got tea to coffee. So welcome everyone. And also especially welcome to Merton.TV tonight. Thank you very much for providing this important public service. And it's good to have people watching the good work of this committee. So yes, so tonight, by the end of our meeting, which hopefully will be between 8:30 and 9:15 for us with wee ones. So that's no, he does.
Past my bedtime.
So hopefully by the end of it we would review the draft statement of community involvement and agree the framework for the reviewing the borough plan moving forward in the beginning of 2019, and fed back particularly on the local engagement already undertaken for both the Wimbledon and the local plan and Sutton-Merton link. So why don't we kick off first with any apologies for absences. So I know Carl was poorly, and it's fantastic for Anthony here, and Geraldine had a meeting conflict, and we've got Dave to substitute for that as well. Brilliant. I think that's it in terms of apologies. So any declarations of interest that we should be aware of? Cool. And minutes of the last meeting. So I'm just going to go through very, very briefly, page by page, because there are only 3 pages in it. So that should be easy enough to go through. So first starting with page 1 for accuracy. Anything flagging? No, I didn't see anything. No? Cool. Page 2. What would be on page 2? There's a few items Tara was taken away to update the group on. Would you like to update the group on certainly?
Yes, this is section F, item 6, boundary changes for the Chaucer Centre. It's just to clarify that the proposed site allocation for the Chaucer Centre would be the same as the current 2014 site allocation for the Chaucer Centre, so it wouldn't include the educational buildings to the north and south. So that will be the proposal. Second one, for number 7, Burlington Road, Tesco residential use pre-app suggested mixed-use scheme. Yet the current consultation, I think it's fair to say, as David Freeman pointed out to me earlier, Redrow are consulting with residents on a variety of different proposals for the Burlington Road site. They're focused on half of the site as well, the site on Burlington Road as opposed to the other side. And they are proposing a small mix of use. They're proposing a mix of uses on the lower ground floors, but it's not settled yet. That's certainly. We're certainly encouraging the whole site to be considered, not just half of it.
Can I advise something?
Yeah.
When you were talking about Chaucer Centre, you were talking about the smart centre on the side.
Yeah, that's excluded.
Yeah.
The latest from the concert hall group, expecting the concert hall group, this is about Wimbledon. We've always said that we welcome a concert hall in Wimbledon if it was viable, and that if someone wants to buy and build one, that would be welcome. The concert hall group are talking to different landowners, and it would be great if they come forward with a viable site, but it must be a viable site. It isn't something that's part of the council's programme. We often get approached at the council to talk about the council's concert hall, but I must clarify that really isn't.
And would they have to fund it privately or the landowner?
It would be really up to them. If they found a willing landowner that wanted to fund it, that would be great for them.
But not the council?
But it won't be the council, no. The council hasn't put that in their programme. And the last one was the query re Taylor Road Day Centre. At the last meeting, councillors asked about Taylor Road and whether or not, I think it was that all councillors were aware of Taylor Road is allocation continuing. Taylor Road Day Centre is allocated in the 2014 plan for the development, and it continues to be allocated in this plan. And yes, councillors are aware.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Carl. And page 3 was just the forward planning for the next couple of committee meetings. we've already got one of the items on this on there, which is the statement of community involvement update.
I'm allowed to ask about the article 4.
HROs. Yes, actually,
Why don't we put why don't we talk about it when we talk about the plan,
Okay.
because it's quite relevant,
Okay.
and actually got some good positive news on that as well.
Oh, good.
So, excellent. So item 4, which was councillor notices of planning applications and outcomes. We had a discussion at last meeting about councillors' involvement in planning decisions and making sure that councillors are aware of what's going on in the ward. And I raised a clarification with colleagues through Tara, through the planning and IT department to make sure that the system for distributing information does work and is accessible. Because with various levels of security, there are certain links you can't click on. I've been told that it is all working, and I've tested it now myself, and it is working. But if there are accessibility issues still remaining on colleagues' devices, do let me know, and do take it away to respective groups as well, for those who haven't. I've done it to Labour group as well and asked that same question. But any other issues like that, please do let us know.
I suppose, I mean, we get the monthly lists, weekly lists, and maybe there should be some training around making sure that you're on top of what's going on with planning, because that's advisory, but then there are often officer decisions that don't come through committee or that we won't know very much about at all. And I think they're the ones probably that it would be helpful to know what's going on in the background. And also about prior approvals, you know, do people know that if a prior approval is presented, the only two people that can oppose it are the people who live adjacent to that property. And in my ward, I write to those two properties every time I see one come through planning. And that is a really helpful thing to do, because the council will be writing, but it won't be writing on the same lines as I would be writing, which is to say you have to speak, otherwise this could happen. And it's been very successful. I think that approach has been very successful. So maybe it's little things like that would help as well, for councillors to be a little bit more tuned into what's going on.
What could, I mean, you've got as chair of the planning committee, what can the planning committee do to help facilitate that?
I'm not sure planning committee can do much about it, because it's actually just looking at the items that are presented to it. But I think groups definitely ought to have a session, really. I mean, those that have been on planning have got a fairly good idea about what it's all about, but it's quite a serious issue, really, when you think about it. These are buildings that we're going to be looking at for a very, very long period of time, and if they're not good, it's really bad news for everybody. So I think groups need to take up the issue, really, and be a bit more focused on it.
What about then having an action on this then, taking forward to ask the training team?
Yeah, I think that would be a really good idea.
Put the offer out there.
Yeah.
Could I add to that the ability to call something in to the planning application committee as well, because that's not something that, especially new councillors, that you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's important as well. And it doesn't necessarily mean because you're calling it in it's going to change anything, but it does mean that you are exercising your right as a local councillor to campaign on behalf of your residents for something, and it can have an impact.
You're giving them the right to speak as well, which they might not get.
Yeah.
And also, I found when I used it, actually, the planning officers then made, they may have made those efforts anyway, but they've seemingly made more efforts to try and satisfy the concerns, which ultimately led to the request being rescinded because things were.
Yeah. I think it's, one of the things about planning committee, which is I like very much, is that the public get a chance to actually speak about what's going on, and that doesn't happen in all boroughs. I mean, Wandsworth doesn't have any speakers at all, which is seems a bit sad, and they can get through 30 items on the agenda, whereas we can't, can we? Get through 30.
The training is actually the planning process, because a lot of councillors in my group say to me, how do I find out what's happening in planning? how do I speak? How do I call something in? Or if I'm going to call it in, how does the resident make sure it gets to the planning committee? So a lot of those things we may know, but a lot of people just do not know that.
You know, I think it would be really useful. But I think when you advertise it, one of the things about training, everybody's busy. You know, you could have this in a video train where somebody, you know, talks it through, and then it's accessible, so you can watch it at home rather than have to turn up for a meeting. I think that would apply to many things, really, wouldn't it? I mean, I would much rather watch it on a video at home. Personally.
So, as an action, why not I take away? I'll drop an email to training team, and we'll ask them to put together like a one-page proposal and again test the waters. Yeah, we all agree here that obviously further awareness is important, but you know, colleagues for whatever reason may not. So I'm sure that's not the case. So let's get that proposal.
The other thing is, I mean, as a collective, we could have a cross-party group actually talking about planning on a video. We could do that and share that, and it'd probably be more receptive, I would think, for the groups, because they know who the people are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we could do that. I think I'd be happy to do that. Yeah.
Okay. Brilliant. I've taken away that action, so let's do that for next time. So if there's anything else in that, we move on to item 5, which is betting shops in Merton. So a bit of background to this. I sit on the licensing committee also, and the recurring theme on the committee was that the mention of planning and use of planning to further restrict betting shops in those areas that may be already saturated. So obviously with my position here, I thought it was important to see what can be done and what has been done, and is there any further room, you know, in the powers we have here to make sure that betting shops moving forward are appropriately situated. And thankfully we have a great resource in the team that put this together, and I think it's a very well put through and very thoughtful paper, and I was going to ask Kyle to run us through some of the broad themes of that as well. We should all have maps again here, so please refer to them.
It's clearly an update on this one, isn't it?
Yes.
So I was going to ask a question on this one, but I don't have to now.
There you go. Brilliant.
Brilliant.
Like
Already satisfied customer. Thank you, Chair. Councillors, we last did some work in about 2013, 2014 on betting shops. Again, it was a licensing-based response, and we did this. I have to thank my colleagues in licensing for helping with this. A couple of things to point out. One is what Dennis has already said, this map replaces the map inside the document. There are actually 2 new betting shops that we didn't highlight properly in Wimbledon. So in the past 4 years, 5 years, there have been 2 new betting shops in Wimbledon, and in your papers tonight you'll see them outlined in red if you want to know exactly who the site addresses. This also includes 1 arcade, so it's not all betting shops. Long story short is that rules have changed since 5 years ago, and actually now there is already restrictions on betting shops opening up. So 5 years ago, various other shops, like an estate agent, could turn into a betting shop without coming near the council, without any planning permission. And lobbying by successive councils around the country means that those rules were changed. And for a new betting shop to open, it has to seek full planning permission. Now, whether that has slowed anything down or had notable effect on somewhere like Merton, I'm not sure it has. We've had roughly the same number of licensed premises for quite some time. There have been foreclosures. It's roughly 6 in Wimbledon and 4 in most of the other town centres. As we're about 2,500 shops right across the borough, to give you an idea of proportion, so we're talking 34 out of 2,500. It's definitely the case that there are records of individual premises having antisocial behaviour associated with them. But that doesn't warrant a planning restriction on betting shops to cover everything. And I suggest that as there is already need for betting shops to apply for planning permission each time, that there really isn't evidence for further restriction in Merton. There is also evidence that the future restriction of the fixed odds betting terminals that are proposed to come in sometime in the next while will definitely impact on the viability of physical premises. So in other words, every premises, when it gets a licence, is currently allowed to have, I think it's 4 fixed odds betting terminals, and there's very little limits on the amount of cash that can be gambled in them. Soon there will be a reduction in the amount of bets you can put on it, on them. The police have records of the amount of gambling that takes place on people's phones, and that is stratospherically much higher than betting shops. If I was to cast into the future, I would say that the physical betting shops will fade out as they become less financially viable in the future.
Can I just say that where you've got gravy there, there's a betting shop right underneath it.
Yes, under the A, and there's a betting shop under the C of Collier's Wood.
Just to add to Tara's presentation as well, the licensing committee also voted to reduce the minimum, reduce it from 4 fixed odds betting terminals down to 2, which is the absolute minimum we can have under the legislation. So from the licensing side, it's as tight as it could be without further national legislation. And as we see from this paper today, given the recent legislative changes, it is considerably tighter than before. In terms of questions, Dave and then Dennis.
Yeah, on the fixed odds betting terminals, I believe the current law is that you can lose £100 in a minute, and that's been reduced to £2. And as you say, on only 2 terminals. And I don't have a huge amount of sympathy for the betting shops who said, if you do this, we'll go out of business and close. Well, kind of so be it if we stop literally hundreds of thousands of people across the country getting addicted and in the end committing suicide a lot of times. There's lots of evidence that it leads to that. So jointly, local council and national government, that they have turned around and said it will come in April is very positive, I think. And I don't think over the 30 odd betting shops we've got in the borough, I cannot see any way that's going to increase, and it might decrease. I think we've got a betting shop in Collier's Wood, and it's used by, you know, the older guys who are in the standard that has all the racing on, and they go over the road and put their bets on. But more and more people are doing it on their phone now. And there's 1 in Collier's Wood, and where you've got 5 in Wimbledon Town Centre, that might go down to 4, it might go down to 3. But that's, I think, going to be the trajectory of change over the next 10 years. So I don't think we need to worry too much about a proliferation of betting shops. It's going to be going the other way.
Is that gambling going to apply online as well? Should do.
I don't know.
Should do, of course.
I think the law only applies to fixed odds betting terminals within the shop, so probably doesn't apply to online.
Thousands online on their mobile. I mean, I was going to mention that, if it's all right. I was going to ask some what David asked, but I read this. There's no possibility of them allowing it to increase, is there? But in here it does say that the original consultation was between £50 and £2. Whereas I agree, I don't think it's going to matter, because my son was sitting around the dinner table last night and gambling on his phone. So I don't think worrying about terminals in there, as long as they're low price, is going to affect that much, because they're doing it on their phone already.
But also, again, to your point into that, you've got the problem with extraterritoriality. How do you deal with sites founded outside the UK? It's a home problem. It's in your router. How do you, from a got children who are of age to have a smartphone, it's how you control access to that. If you're an adult, that's slightly more challenging.
My son's 34, so I can't
Wow.
really. But may I also say, when I was an apprentice in many decades ago, I used to actually have to run to the bookies for my senior colleagues and put bets on. But I also remember before they came along how much more dangerous it was. So betting shops are slightly less dangerous than alternatives, especially if you gamble on your phone. There is no restriction on what you can do because you can sit there 24 hours.
And there was actually Ready Falls, today's You and Yours had actually cited that. So you can actually register yourself as someone who should be contacted by a gambling firm, and they and also should for people who are falling through the cracks and still being addicted and still being contacted. But have you got any further questions on the paper before we move on?
I just wonder what we could do about licensing hours, because for me that's the biggest problem that we've got.
Well, licensing hours. Well, actually, on that, I was going to recommend to the committee that I contact the chair of licensing and ask her to circulate the paper to them with maybe that remark about the licensing can be, what can be done.
Yeah, because the big problem that we have is it's a magnet for youngsters and people with drinks. They buy their alcohol and they go in the betting shop and they hang around, and it's that. I mean, I would say Figs Marsh and Graveney, particularly the one in Sutton Road, we've got a real problem with youngsters hanging around, and not just youngsters, but drinkers hanging around the betting shop, and particularly at night. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Why? I mean, why? I mean, I haven't got any problem with betting shops. My dad used to gamble, and you know, I think a lot of people do. But you know, I just think it's very sad that this is a kind of an all-day and all-night drama now. And the other thing that I would say is, children obviously can't put bets on in here, but I do think we need to have some concern about the amount of children who are gambling at the moment, and I don't know whether that fits into anything that we can do.
Not for the committee, but for licensing, working with children and young people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's major.
But why don't I then, as an action, raise it with the fellow chair, and from a planning perspective, and this is the latest information we've got, so hopefully it will help colleagues in the council as well when they make further deliberations on betting shops.
They've banned smoking ads on television. I mean, the amount of commercial gambling ads that young people see day in, day out is just appalling.
All right. Item 6. So local plan engagement update.
This is just a verbal update. Oh no,
Well,
it doesn't.
those are good. Yeah. So item 6. Essentially, as we know, there are multiple consultations currently underway. The 3 currently are obviously the Wimbledon plan, the Borough plan overall, and the Sutton-Merton link. And I asked Tara to just update us midpoint in these consultations as just a useful barometer of where we're at, any flashpoints, anything to worry about, but also talk about some of the successes in the consultation, because so far over 2,000 emails, letters have been is that received or sent?
Sent out.
That's been sent out, and all households obviously contacted via my Merton as well. So there's been quite an active consultation. Make sure as many local people as possible are getting involved. And if you're watching this, please do get involved if you haven't already. Tara, over to you.
So those letters and emails, are they spread throughout the borough? Or
Yes.
Straight in?
Yeah, no, definitely spread throughout the borough. We do check that we're having an even distribution across groups.
Good question.
And of course that doesn't represent 2,000 households, because if I contact a group that themselves represents 2,000 households, the spread is much wider. I've used this opportunity to point out Mr. Freeman's kind contribution to me of what Rains Park and West Barnes Residents magazine just there. And it's messages like those from community groups. I think, as we said at the previous consultation, peer-to-peer messages go so much further than the official email or the official letter from the council. People will listen to something their neighbour tells them, or their friend, or someone in their community group, or at the gym or something. much more than a piece of headed paper with the words local plan sent by us. The paper really summarises what we've sent out, and some, not all, of the meetings we're going to. I sort of boil it down into we're also doing dedicated engagement with some groups. So we've done quite a lot of work with gypsies and travellers, which is an important part of looking at accommodation needs. And we're doing a bit of work with schools, which will actually take place in January, because schools are absolutely flat out between September and Christmas. And the head teachers very clearly said they were not coming near us. We were not to go near them until January. There are 3 consultations running at once, and that's actually quite effective, because people don't necessarily compartmentalise their views into different particular things. So if someone wants to talk about, say, Wimbledon Town Centre Master Plan, and they want to ask questions about business growth or affordable housing, that can seed into local plan much more easily than if we say to them, well, you have to wait 6 months and then we'll ask you about that. We're halfway through the consultations at this stage, and the figures, I checked the responses so far. For the local plan, we have currently 22 responses, all from all bar 3 from community groups, so it represents a much wider range of people. On Future Wimbledon Master Plan, we have over 200 responses, mainly from individuals, although a fewer from groups. On the Sutton link, which is Transport for London's consultation actually, but we're supporting it and promoting events. Across Sutton and Merton, we've got about 3,000 responses. Again, almost exclusively individuals. And what we see is that the more binary consultations will get a much stronger response. So if you're asked to choose between X, Y, or Z, Sutton link, Route 1, Route 2, or 3, it's a much easier way to do a quick response. If it's something as complex as a local plan, which covers many different issues, it will be community groups that invest the time and energy in going through the plan and giving different responses. What has worked quite well is buddying up with Transport for London. So last Saturday or the Saturday before, 2 Saturdays ago we were at Morden station and talking quite a lot about Morden regeneration, as well as the Sutton link. Last Saturday we were in Collingwood Library, which was a bit quieter. Again, lots of talk about what is happening with Collingwood Woods, and people see the change to Brownwood Tower and want to know about what the next steps are. This Saturday we'll be in Wimbledon station, and those kind of events where you're teaming up are quite good. What is more difficult is trying to do we're lucky enough to have been invited to lots of community groups. We went to the Battles Area Resident Association recently, for example. What I struggle with is trying to do a presentation that covers the whole local plan, because it does become, it's not the most exciting subject when you're trying to cover a lot of different planning policies, but focused on people's area. So focusing on South Wimbledon, focusing on Morden, has a bit more resonance. What I would really ask a favour from councillors is to push the message out. Please respond, and yourselves and anyone who's watching this, please respond as much as possible. The council pushes out its social media, but again, I really expect that people will listen to something they see on Nextdoor or Twitter from somebody they know much more than they'll listen to something on the official council social media page. So please encourage responses. We have another halfway through, another 6 weeks to go. For the local plan in particular, it's a big complex document, and we're happy to obviously go out to talk to anyone who would be interested, and also if people can't respond by the 6th, we can consider that and meet with them in January to bring in responses. The other 2 consultations on Future Wimbledon and Sutton will end on the 6th. But please just strongly encourage responses.
So, questions. So, Dave first, and then.
Yeah, I think on Sutton Link, I was at Collegewood Library Saturday, just gone, spoke to the people there and looked at, and you were saying that you get better responses when you're saying basically X, Y, Z, here's 3 options. My problem with the Sutton Link thing is that there has to be a 4th option if you don't do any of them. I'm not seeing at the moment how any of them benefit the people of Collegewood or South Wimbledon or Wimbledon. I can see how they might benefit people from Sutton, but from our point of view, I think if GFL has got a large amount of money to spend on a new transport project in this part of London, it doesn't need to be linking Sutton to Collegewood or South Wimbledon better. I think if they're to look at it strategically, you might say linking the south and east of Merton to Croydon better would be a much better way to spend any money that GFL have got, because those are really the links that we do need, where people want to go to the arcade, to the shopping in Croydon if they live to the east of the borough, or want to get to Croydon Hospital, because they often use that if they live to the east of the borough. I think that's a much more important link than linking us to Sutton. And so I will put that in my own consultation, and anyone who does listen to me on Twitter, I'll be encouraging them to do the same, but I think we should put the message to Transport for London that we don't need better links to Sutton, we need better links to Croydon.
Chair, could I just say that I looked at Transport for London, maybe there's a summary of just a pie chart of the responses, and 15% of people who've responded have not chosen one of the 3 options. I haven't drilled into that to see whether they're all saying do nothing or do something different, but there's 15% of people that clearly don't want one of the 3.
I will try to push that up.
Anton? And I was going to say on the local plan, it's quite clear that sort of the repeat players responding to community organisations that respond to these things. What is at the first stage, first round of consultation, what was the sort of level of consultation response to the local plan and sites allocated?
Well over 1,000 responses, but it was it's much easier to get a response at that stage because it's short, sharp questions. What do you think about the local area? What do you want to see? What don't you like? There was a series of questions by theme, so we asked questions on, I think they're still on the website, in fact. On SurveyMonkey there was a theme on affordable housing, one on green space, definitely one on the built environment and design. And it's much easier when you're not faced with pages of documents to comment on, draft planning policies that will, once adopted, end up with Councillor as a planning committee making vital decisions for the borough. But the first stage we were asking short, sharp questions about what people thought of the area and what policies people wanted to see and didn't. So much easier to respond, much faster to respond. And I do feel that sometimes we're enthusiastic when we're talking, and then they realise that we need to read through at least 10, possibly many more pages to be able to respond on the draft local plan.
Is there any way of taking that learning to apply it to the second round consultation? Because I think a lot of the issues and questions are still the same. The answers are actually still binding in terms of, yes, you can have the relevant policy document on affordable housing, but actually the question is, how much do you want, and how are you willing to balance it in other places? For social media kind of stuff, is there any way of using some of the first round consultation materials to garner responses to the second round consultation at all? Does that sound in any way reasonable?
Yes, I think it is, but the thing that we have to balance is that at subsequent stages of consultation, the idea is that the draft local plan is what's been commented on, not, for example, a summary version of the draft local plan. So in a previous iteration many years ago, we had a draft local plan and then a summary document, which kind of put it all on sort of 3 or 4 pages. And as it happens, we were told it was borderline on sort of legality with that particular consultation, because people could respond to the summary version and overlook something that they might have felt important in the main version. And because it's a quasi-legal process, unfortunately we do need to ultimately point them to one source of information rather than a summary of the same. I think, though, it's a good point you raised, Councillor. I think we probably could have done better with the "you said we did" approach. We focused quite a lot this time, I will say, on the production of the local plan, and we should have spent more time. We summarised the responses received and the presentations on the website, but we should have done more really to say, on affordable housing, you said this, see page 74.
Yeah.
On open space, you said this, see page 274. So I appreciate what you're saying, and I think if we will be doing subsequent rounds, and we need to take that on board.
But those things as well, in the sort of terms of peer-to-peer stuff, obviously, we also have the same issues that the general public have.
Yeah.
There's a lot of data here.
Yeah.
Actually, highlighting some of it, where the key bits are,
Yeah.
would be useful.
Yeah.
But very last question was on the master plan. You said there's about 200 responses, mainly from individuals.
Maybe, yeah.
And I wondered if, as I suspect is the case, and you touched on this, some of the responses to the master plan will actually really pertain to the local plan.
Yeah.
Is there any, does that get drawn across?
Absolutely, and that's one of the benefits of doing this all at once, and not having to put responses in a box to wait, or having missed responses because we did other work previously. So there's a lot of commentary. I've read through a chunk of the responses, and I can see a lot of commentary that relates to wider issues. The master plan is guidance, so it doesn't allocate new sites, it doesn't suggest new policies, and therefore responses that do say actually we want to see this or that, that is really kind of policy, it's something we'll be looking at. And I think we'll probably be getting back to most people who responded and saying actually we're going to, if it's all right with you, we're going to use your response for the local plan.
And just that reminded me of one very last question, sorry.
Brief question?
Yeah, I know, sorry. The master plan is based on the current local plan.
Yeah.
Not the new one.
There isn't a substantial difference between the Wimbledon approach to Wimbledon and the current new local plan. So Wimbledon, for example, isn't making town centre isn't getting bigger. It's still the part of the borough's employment has still got the most, and will continue to have the most shops and retail experiences, etc. So because they're very similar, it's something we would keep an eye on. If all goes well, the local plan we're looking at here today will be adopted in 2020, and at that point we would really need to look back at the Wimbledon guidance on the master plan and just check that they're aligned.
Would you, Dennis?
Thank you, Jeff. Two very simple questions. First of all, I was looking at the meetings. There seemed to be nothing after the 6th of December, even though it says up until January. And secondly, I note that the Wimbledon Master Plan had 5 meetings until date, whereas the Sutton-Merton had 10 meetings. So is there any reason why the Wimbledon Master Plan is half the amount of meetings for the Sutton-Merton?
Yes, Sutton-Merton covers 2 boroughs and is funded by TfL. And Wimbledon Master Plan covers one very important but relatively geographically small area. Also, the Sutton Link, as Councillor Ward mentioned, the meetings are drop-ins, so it's not, say, explaining about a tram or a bus rapid transit in great technical detail. It is simply a series of options and encouraging people to respond via the website.
On that Wimbledon Master Plan,
Yeah.
You rightly said it's a guidance
Yeah.
document rather than a policy document. But a lot of residents in Wimbledon are getting very confused. They're saying, oh my God, this Wimbledon Master Plan is going to be policy and we're going to have meeting stories, this and that. So is there any way you can relay that information to these residents to say that this is guidance only, it's not the local policy?
It is very clearly stated in the introduction of the plan and several points within it that it's guidance, it's supplementary guidance. There's no, it explicitly states that there's no new policies and no new sites. I think we've reiterated that on the website as well.
Yeah.
So we've been as clear as we can, and I agree there are people who are concerned that this is policy and also that the council is going to build things. I think it's not everybody who understands how buildings occur, and that it isn't the council who necessarily owns all the land and builds all the buildings. But it is absolutely clearly stated at various points on that document that it is definitely guidance.
So the developer, this is probably a question for later, the developer 4 years down the line, I can't say, well, actually, the Wimbledon Master plan says I can have 18 stories, so I'm going to go in accordance with that rather than a local plan.
I think if Crossrail 2 was delivered in 4 years' time, it would be very, very surprising, because the proposals for higher buildings are directly connected with the Crossrail 2 area in Wimbledon. And the master plan is very clear that the highest buildings that you're referring to are purely related to above station development, which would only come after Crossrail 2. I think at this stage, given that Crossrail 2 still hasn't got certainty on funding, we're talking the 2040s as at the earliest. So I don't think that's going to become an issue within the lifetime of the master plan.
I wonder when we're doing all these consultations. I'm going to take an example back when I chaired the local daycare organisation when we originally started off in Morden. This is only an example. And nowadays you've got sort of local social media, you've got next door. And if I was to go in and start saying, you know, because elderly people are concerned, not necessarily for themselves, but for their children and grandchildren, about the future of the area. If I was to start talking about, well, you can contact the council on this and so on, I would suggest, judging by what happened before, 2/3 of the people would automatically blank, and that'd be the end of it. They'll moan to me about it, but that's as far as it's going to go. What I'm suggesting now, as I'm back running it again, maybe only temporarily, if we're going to go through others, because this organisation is now spread. It's spread to Morden, it's spread to Fixed Marsh, and so on. If there was going back to a more traditional way of interacting with people, would that be possible to have some form of doing it that way?
What do you mean, Councillor?
More traditional, i.e. sort of...
Letters?
Yeah, not emails.
Oh,
So,
we do get quite a lot of letters.
yeah, no, I mean sending out the message. I'm not talking about getting the message back.
Spoilers. That's the two items on the agenda next. So it's the statement of community involvement and the key stakeholders there.
Okay.
Good point.
Yeah.
Is that going to answer?
Yeah, well,
the
that's
question?
fine. That, if we're going to talk about it,
Yeah.
then it's fine.
I think it's striking. I agree with you that letters definitely serve their purpose,
Yeah.
especially regarding a particular site. I find that actually writing to people in the area gets us. There's always a spike in feedback of all kinds, actually often spiking electronic feedback once we write to people living around a particular site. So the way consultations are going are electronic first. Not to say that we haven't sent out any letters, but they are electronic first. And it's things like Merton, which should go to every household in the borough, and if it doesn't, please let me know, because the council does pay for it to be delivered to every household in the borough. It's those kind of newsletters pointing out things that are better maybe than individual letters.
The other problem, the sort of demographic group I'm talking about, is a lot of them have trouble with mobility.
Yeah.
So if you have meetings at the local station, and it will take me or you 5-10 minutes to walk down there. An hour. Would they want to go? No.
Well, as the notes say, we're happy to go to anybody who invites us.
What's their opinion?
And we meet with those groups specifically to talk about these kind of things.
That's good.
So if anybody would like me to come to any other groups, we have done quite a lot of that.
You still on it still?
Yes, but it's still actually as well as that. But this is a particular group who we used to go to individual groups, and we used to go to age concern, and for example, there's a vision impaired group, and then they got together and decided that they were stronger together. So actually they all come and talk to us once. But Cyril is another one that has already responded. Cyril responded.
We used to have consultative forum at one point.
Yeah.
Okay, go for it. What's your...
It says Borough Planning Advisory Committee 28th of November, I think it should be 29th of November. Agenda item 6, you realise that?
Oh, at the top of the...
Oh, sorry, my mistake. What? 29. Today's the 29th, isn't it?
Today's 29.
Mine says 28.
Oh.
Can't explain that, Councillor, why yours says 28 and everyone else's says 29.
Oh, sorry.
Definitely 29.
Some of the dating's gone wrong.
28 here on there. Thank you
Apologies,
for
Councillor.
clarifying that. Excellent. So, next item is looking ahead actually to the borough plan itself and follows nicely on in the sense of how this committee would scrutinise, review and make further recommendations on the cabinet. So there are various ways we could do this, thematically, line by line, hybrid of two. Bearing in mind that the two main drivers for updating the plan, other than the need to update the plan in statute, is the National Planning Policy Framework and the London Plan, in addition to all the learnings that have been accumulated over since it was last reviewed. My recommendation to the committee would be to do it thematically, and that would enable us further opportunities to dive deep into particular subjects where there may be substantial change, rather than focus line by line and potentially not have the time to focus on that. That would mean, though, and I would need bear everyone's indulgence for this, to have another meeting, which isn't currently scheduled, potentially in February. And that means that we would have enough time to review some initial things, and then I believe the London plan is going to be finalised after that meeting, and then we can revisit in March further with those further developments added into the final plan, and make recommendations to Cabinet and Council from there. So I open up for discussion, but I welcome, again, this is my first term in the committee, I welcome points from others who've been here a lot longer than I have.
All I would say about meetings is, could you have some sort of doodle for the date, because I should be at Links Governors tonight, and so I just, I don't want clashes, and I think we're all doing different things, so
February is a difficult month.
yeah, I do think we need a doodle on it.
Yeah.
Fine.
Next meeting is scheduled for March.
So doodle for the next meeting in February,
Please, yeah.
and then we've got another meeting in March.
We do. Chair, I would say that the London plan won't be finalised until sometime between May and July. So when we're working on the local plan, we won't be finalising until we're sure of where things are with the mayor's London plan.
But at least before the end of the financial year, we can get a decent portion of the plan out in terms of green areas. And there's of course additional things to review as well. Any further questions, comments, suggestions? Excellent. Dennis, back to your question. So, yes, the last item. Statement of community involvement. So, just to remind everyone why we're reviewing this. So, last meeting, 31. So, last meeting we made a recommendation to Cabinet that we review the statement of community involvement, because it hadn't been reviewed for a wee while, and of course after every consultation it makes sense to take stock, lessons learned, incorporate what's the high impact, low cost methods of engagement versus high cost, low impact, and various other means, including streaming, to get people to feedback their views. So we currently have a paper for us this evening, and I've got some comments on it. I think next time you wanted to just initially present it or say anything.
I'll give a quick overview, if that's all right, Chair.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you, Chair. It's really just to say that this is a draft. Already mentioned to the Chair that I think we should add sections after the end of the consultation to say what works well, what maybe is less effective, and that also we should have that section kept fairly regularly under review rather than a static document, because things are moving so fast in the world of communications, and things that were effective a few years ago are maybe less effective now. And so any comments that councillors have are very
So I'll just take a quick, so Dennis first, any other questions? Thanks, go for it.
1.31. Would you like to explain it? Now, I know we can't get round these things because they are statutory from government and we run them. But what sort of impact does that particular paragraph on what the average resident in Merton would actually put forward? What percentage do you reckon that those would actually strike out? Because that's how I see it, being very cynical.
I'm not sure I understand what you mean, Councillor, sorry.
We're here, we're looking at these plans and these guidance that we get, and they tend to overrule a lot of what residents want, or what a lot of the residents say. It's like a get out of jail free card for the local authority, if you like.
So paragraph 1, so it's page
1.31 is page 42.
So page 10 of the document. So that is all planning policy documents.
I didn't want to read it out, so people would bore.
No, it's just more for benefit of people watching. So all planning policy documents and consultation material made available via the website, able to download, and printing copies at consultation stages and final documents are made available in the reference line.
Oh, I'm stuck on one. That wasn't the one I should have marked. Sorry, got that wrong.
It's all right.
I'll have to look for what's the... no, I'll look for it. You see that? Right, I've read the wrong one. Sorry.
It's all right. All right. I've got some comments, but is there any questions or any comments you want to add?
I was going to say, is there any substantial difference between 2006, the original one, for individual planning applications, what we did then and what we do now?
I'm afraid, Councillor, I simply don't know. When I deal with the planning application element, I go to the development control team and say, right, what's the legislation? And they say, this is it, this is what we have to do, and that's it. And what I can do is, after the meeting, send you the latest legislation for 2006 now, but I'm afraid I'm the wrong person to interpret that.
I just wondered what, to me, it seems that, for most people, the way they're going to engage with this is going to be individual planning applications.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the big thing that happens once in a review.
Yeah.
And I just wondered, obviously there'll be a statutory minimum, but there might be learning and best practice that we could do for above and beyond.
It will depend on resources. And one thing I was very aware in 2006 that someone referred to recently is that, as the Kirby, that back then we had a lot more community forum, community liaison meetings and community support and financial wherewithal on communications. And government's direction was much more balanced, I think, between paper-based communication and online. And the Painsman's definitely much more online now, and much more self-service.
Chairman, can I make 1 or 2 points?
Could I ask to wait to any other business, but I'm happy to take questions from both of you. Is that okay?
Okay.
Just from a point of view being a member of the committee versus, but I'm happy to definitely take questions. Dave?
Yeah, on planning applications, I think we've already talked about, it's compulsory for anyone like myself and Linda who sit on planning committees and have gone through the training before we sit on it. And we talked about putting in some e-learning in place for other councillors who don't sit on a committee to know more about planning. And I think that will help in that when councillors are talking to their residents about applications in their ward, or more generally, that they'll be able to explain more about the planning process. But some possibly better explanation to the public of planning processes, because just to use an example, almost every application that comes before planning committee, you have at least one person who's written a letter in and says, I object to this because I think it will affect the value of my house. And it's very, very clear in planning law that any speculation on the value of neighbouring properties just is not allowed to be considered. And yet, month after month after month, on every single application, somebody writes a letter in who has not been advised by their local councillor or by the planning department or advised by somebody that if you think a development is going to affect the value of a house, we cannot even, as a planning commission, we cannot even consider that. It's not a planning, a material planning, and that's just one example. There are many other things when people say, what about this, what about that? And I don't think we should strive to educate the public entirely. It's part of our role as planning councillors to know the rules and explain them to the public when an application comes up. But I think more generally, a slightly better understanding amongst councillors and then amongst the general public of what they can or cannot use as arguments either for or against a planning application in their neighbourhood, I think would be really welcome.
Yeah, can I suggest that maybe as part of this document we add a section on finding out more, especially on the planning application sides, because there are a number of good websites, and I've seen useful videos, so there's Urban Design London for people who are interested in design, who provide that kind of interpretation for what people can do if they're concerned. There's the planning portal, which provides, frankly, anything you ever wanted and didn't want to know about all types of application. But when you might get a complex letter with legalese from the council that we have to send out to help translate that. I think maybe we should add some pointers to where people can find out more to translate these issues into English.
Could I also add an action for everyone here, since I'm giving an action tonight? Just because we've got some time before we need to consult on this document, and it would be good if you can just send to myself or Tara or both any further suggestions, any areas where we think we can improve it, and then we can then take that away, ask officers who put this together to come back and say what's possible, doable, not doable, cost-wise, and then we can go from there. Again, taking all the learnings from the local plan, what it's seen as again the high impact, low cost versus high cost, low impact approaches, just to make sure that what you reach as many people as possible while maintaining the fact that there is limited and ever increasing limited resources for local government to engage with people. Linda, you want to ask a question?
I just think frequently asked questions would be a good one, because that would clear quite a bit out, particularly things like basements.
I mean, for one particularly my sort of comms hat on. One way is how do you link up with the role and programme of activity? I'm not saying every day, but we have communication channels online. And how do you just once a month or once a quarter just put a did you know that one of the FAQs, for example, go there, just drives traffic, drives users awareness, that type of thing. It's a light, low resource, higher impact approach to drawing people's attention to documents. Dennis, did you have anything to say?
No, sorry, I just can't find that thing I was asking. I'll read through it and send you a message and tell you which one it is.
Cool. All right, so unless there's anything else, I'm going to move on to any other business and our public questions. You want to go first? Because I asked you to hold your hand.
No, I've got no vote.
Was it answered?
I would have pointed out one or two things in the planning
Please do,
application's comments.
Please do.
On page 53.
Okay.
Just really clarification points.
Go for it.
In paragraph 1.77,
Yeah.
it is the final decision with the grant planning permission will be taken by the team leader. And that slightly is a sort of bold statement, and in a sense conflicts with
Scrutiny.
183. I just wonder whether it should go on to say, unless this is being determined by the planning applications committee at the end of 177.
We'll add it to the points of clarity. Thank you. No,
and then refer it to 182.
I think this is where we have a clash of process versus scrutiny. And you're right, it should be cross-referenced and linked in.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And on that, I think it's a typo because the sentence doesn't make sense at the end anyway. And what it probably should say is the final decision whether or not to grant planning permission can be taken by the team leader or referred to PAC. That are the two options. Either the officer makes the decision and it's done by delegated powers, or it's sent to the committee. And it's just, I think there's a typo or some words have been missed out there. I don't think it's a deliberate attempt to say something that's not true.
Say that paragraph, why it would be sent to them, under what condition it would be sent to the application committee. Because a lot of residents do get
Well,
confused.
that's explained elsewhere. It's been decided.
What criteria allows it to go to the planning applications committee?
Well, there's two other points there, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
There's no mention here of the call-in process at all. So it should be worthy of a mention somewhere.
Yeah.
The council's call-in process. And also, in terms of the waiting time for an application to be determined, in 178, 179, there's no mention of the inspectorate.
Okay.
I have known the situation where the inspectorate has a backlog of 12 months, 18 months.
Yes.
That can throw up.
Throw an application out.
Just to mention somewhere.
Yes.
Good point. I think the calling point is a wider thing about how the scrutiny process actually works as well, in terms of, and linked into Dave's point about when you do raise an issue with an application, what are those criteria for doing that, and explaining that point that just stating this does not, it is not a valid objection. So thank you very much for your contribution.
Just one further point. On 182, and I think we mentioned this already, some applications are determined, etc., etc. I've written here which.
You mean that, which other? Yeah, cool.
Just the larger one.
I think also there's the balance between depth and breadth in terms of this type of document, and that's in the sense of the level of detail that some people get.
Yes.
But you're absolutely right in terms of, at the very least, an appendix with a case study or an example there that brings it to life.
Yeah.
Actually, that
Well,
helps.
depends who this is really for.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Yes. Well, it's supposed to be for community involvement and a policy. But you're right.
Just sort of one thing, it's about design and review panel.
Yeah.
But there is no criteria for when an application is sent to the design and review panel. And
I'm afraid that's concurrent. I know that the emphasis is very much on it going before it becomes a
pre-app, at pre-app level.
but whether or not it's a certain scale, I simply don't know.
I think the thing that we've noticed is that most of the design review panels will be focused around Wimbledon and not in the Merton area, and I think our anxiety is that there should be any large applications, wherever they are,
I was going to say,
should be referred.
with planning colleagues, is there any way you guys can take that back to get more clarity than
Could I just say that design review is a separate panel, and I understand in terms of the review is taking place of that.
It's very powerful at planning.
It is, but it is separate to this.
Yeah.
So rather than repeat the review of the design review panel as part of this, I understand that that's taking place.
There is a review.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Are there any other questions? What's clarity?
No.
Excellent. And I thank you very much everyone for coming and contributing.